We were so close I could hear the ambulance engine 40, maybe 50 feet away, but there was a wall of trash piled on my bridge higher than my shoulders, sealing it off like a barricade in a war zone. My wife was going limp in my arms, slipping in and out of consciousness, and in that moment, a cold truth hit me so hard it felt like a punch to the ribs. The HOA didn't just want my bridge gone, they had nearly killed my family. My name is Ethan Crowell, third-generation farmer born and raised on a patch of land called Crowell Acres, tucked against the slow bend of the Ridgewater River in Benton County. Out here you measure wealth by sunrises, by the crunch of gravel under your boots, by the smell of cut hay, not by paint shades approved by committees, or how neatly your mailbox matches the next guy's. My grandfather built our wooden bridge back in the 60s, hand-cut beams, hand-driven nails, a stubborn structure that survived 2 floods and 1 wildfire. It's the only quick route to the main road. Without it, you're stuck taking a 55-minute detour through hills that chew up trucks for breakfast. That bridge isn't just lumber, it's our lifeline. And somehow that lifeline became the target of a woman named Marcia Lowell. Silverford Glen HOA sits on the opposite bank, freshly paved streets, identical gray houses, and enough rules to make a prison warden blush. Marcia ran the place like she was queen of a laminated kingdom. Always in a pastel blazer, always with a clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon. The first time she drove down my gravel road in that spotless SUV, she stepped out like she was descending from a cloud, looked at my land and said, "Mr. Crowell, your bridge is in the way." Just like that. No warm-up, no apology, no logic. She wanted to build a waterfront recreation zone kayak docks, a paddleboard pier, a walkway right on the only spot in 5 miles deep enough to actually use the river. My spot. My family's spot. The only place calm enough to cross. And she looked me straight in the eye and told me I had 72 hours to elevate or remove the bridge. I told her no, plain, simple. She didn't blink, didn't smile, just said, "Progress has deadlines." Mr. Crowell before clicking her heels back to her SUV like she'd just delivered a sermon. 2 days later, I found a bright orange environmental violation notice slapped on my front door. A bunch of HOA jargon about obstruction aesthetics and water flow concerns. Total nonsense. My property isn't under their jurisdiction by a single inch. But Marcia wasn't interested in what was legal. She was interested in getting her way. Things escalated quietly. First, the kind of quiet that sinks into the air and makes the hair on your neck stand up. Strangers stood just beyond my fence line taking pictures of wildlife, except their cameras were pointed straight at my property markers. Then one night around 2 a.m., I saw headlights slithering along the Silverford Glen side of the river. I killed my flashlight and listened. And I heard voices floating over the water as clear as if they were whispering into my ear. Craig Dalton, HOA treasurer, sounded shaken. "Marcia, we're 20 grand deep in permits. If we miss the start date, the investors pull out. I'm not taking the fall for this." Marcia snapped back. "He'll move the bridge, or I'll move it for him." Standing there in the dark listening to them talk about my home like an inconvenience, a tool, a piece of scenery they could rearrange. Something twisted in my stomach. A warning, a storm cloud silent but heavy. I didn't know how far they would go, not yet. The real crash came the morning my wife, Rachel, 38 weeks pregnant, woke up pale and shaking. She could barely catch her breath. Her pulse was racing. I called 911 instantly. They dispatched an ambulance. The operator said 40 to 50 minutes to reach us if the roads were clear. Clear. The word hits different when you rely on a single bridge to save your family. I carried Rachel to the truck, but for the first time in 15 years, the engine didn't turn. Not a cough, not a hiccup, dead. And I knew deep down this wasn't mechanical failure. This was timing. Cruel, deliberate timing. I lifted her into my arms and ran boots pounding the dirt lungs, burning heart beating so loud it drowned out every thought. When I broke through the tree line and saw the bridge, I stopped so suddenly Rachel nearly slipped from my grip. Trash. A mountain of it. Bags, broken pallets, busted furniture, construction scraps, even a sun-faded kayak with a Silverford Glen property sticker stuck on the side, everything stacked and wedged until it formed a wall across the entire bridge. 6 feet tall, impassable. On the far side, the ambulance lights spun frantically. Red, white, red, so close I could hear the engine rumbling so far, they might as well have been across the ocean. "Hold on," an EMT yelled. "We're coming over." They threw the doors open, grabbed gear, and tried climbing the trash mound. They slipped, cursed, sliced their hands on rusted metal. One EMT cut his arm on a jagged beam, left a streak of blood as he pushed upward, determined to reach us. Rachel was barely conscious now, whispering weakly, "Don't let go. Ethan, don't let go." I couldn't breathe. Not from running, not from exhaustion, from fear. Raw, unfiltered fear that I was about to lose everything. We hauled her up that stinking wall of garbage inch by inch, like trying to drag hope out of mud. When the EMTs finally got her onto the stretcher and raced her toward the ambulance, I stumbled after them, shaking so hard I could barely climb into the passenger seat. As we sped away, sirens slicing through the morning, I looked back one last time. In the pulsing red flashes, I saw it clearly, the blood smear on that metal beam, fresh, undeniable. A signature, a mistake, a confession. That's when something inside me snapped into place. They hadn't just blocked traffic. They had interfered with an emergency rescue. They had endangered my wife, my unborn son. And they had left behind enough evidence to crush themselves without me lifting a finger. Rachel survived. Our son survived. I'll never forget the sound of his first cry, a tiny, defiant little squeak that felt like the world cracking open in relief. But while they rested in the hospital, Sheriff Tom Reyes pulled me aside, his voice low and grave. "Ethan, EMTs reported delayed emergency access due to a man-made obstruction. If that's true, this isn't civil anymore. This is criminal." We drove straight back to the property at dawn. The trash pile still sat there ugly and towering. Those HOA garbage bags, that kayak, and of course the thin streak of EMT blood on the beam like a message written in red. Sheriff Reyes took one look and muttered, "Somebody's going to jail." Then we checked my camera system. What Marcia's cronies didn't know was that the moment they cut the power line, the camera switched to solar backup. The footage was perfect, time-stamped, clear. A Glen Waste Services truck creeping onto my bridge at 2:04 a.m., headlights off. 3 men, silhouettes but recognizable, dumping load after load, shaping it into a barrier. And Sheriff Reyes found the invoice. Paid with Silverford Glen HOA discretionary funds. Signed electronically by Marcia Lowell and Treasurer Craig Dalton. I felt something rise in my chest, then not rage, not satisfaction, but purpose. They wanted a fight. Fine. I was done playing defense. I called Mitch, old friend, runs heavy machinery, the kind of guy who'd tow a mountain if you asked nicely, and bought him a beer. "I need a cleanup," I said, "and I need it delivered." He laughed. "Return to sender, huh? I'm on my way." By sunset, the bridge was spotless again. And at the entrance to Silverford Glen, Mitch's crew had stacked every scrap of trash into a perfect pyramid, HOA bags, facing outward kayak on top, like a crown, blood-marked beam, propped right in front, like evidence on display. With a sign, "Return to sender. Please claim your property." Residents gathered fast. Confusion turned to outrage, then suspicion, then horror. Someone shouted, "Did Marcia do this?" And suddenly the HOA board looked less like leaders and more like suspects. The courtroom showdown came a week later. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, cheap carpet, a judge who looked like he'd seen enough HOA cases for 2 lifetimes. The prosecutor started with the ambulance footage, then the still photos, then the camera video of the Glen Waste truck. Every image landed like a hammer. Then came the invoice with Marcia's signature. Marcia tried to speak. "Your Honor?" This was a community cleanup. The judge didn't even let her finish. At 2 a.m, with headlights off, blocking the only emergency route to a residence, Mrs. Lowell, choose your next words carefully. Craig cracked first. He shot to his feet, sweating through his shirt. It was her. She ordered the dump. She told me the investors were pulling out. Marcia spun around, eyes wild. "You're lying. You begged me to handle it." The judge slammed his gavel so hard the entire room jumped. Enough. Silence snapped across the courtroom like a trap closing. And then came the verdict. Illegal dumping, obstruction of emergency services, reckless endangerment, misuse of community funds, conspiracy to defraud. Marcia. 9 months in county jail, $37,000 in fines, mandatory community service. Craig, 5 years probation, barred from any financial office. The judge leaned forward and said, "This case is not about trash. It is about arrogance, entitlement, and the dangerous belief that power excuses anything." Mr. Crowell stood his ground. Today, this court stands with him. The gavel fell, and just like that, the whole rotten structure of their power shattered. Silverford Glen HOA collapsed from the inside, board suspended, county oversight installed, EPA circling like hawks. And I walked out of that courtroom with one truth echoing in my mind. Some bridges are made of wood and nails. Others are made of boundaries you defend with everything you have. And when someone tries to tear down either one, you don't back up. You stand your ground.